everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll do a little housekeeping first, and then as everybody else gets signed in, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to our 10 tips for using Microsoft Word class. This class is designed for beginners, but there should be something for everybody, even if you have used Word before. Hopefully you pick up a few pointers that will help you as you work with Word going forward. Before we get started, I just want to give a quick thank you to the Friends of the Warren-Newport Public Library. They sponsor all of our programs here at WNPL, and we really appreciate their support. If you're interested in looking into joining this group, they are available to join. You can actually get an application in our Bookends free bookstore, used bookstore that's at the front of the library. There are occasionally free titles in there, but most of them are very inexpensive. All of the proceeds from Bookends do go back into the library, but you can get an application to join the Friends at Bookends or at the front checkout desk. All right, so I am recording this, but it is a webinar, so your names or anything are not going to appear on the screen for the recording. So you can feel free to ask questions. Questions will be anonymous. You can even raise your hand. There's a little raise hand icon, or you can ask me questions in the chat as well. We're going to get started right now with just trying to gauge a little bit about how all of you feel about using Word. I'm going to send you a poll, and you should see that on your screen. If you can see that and you want to go ahead and actually answer the questions there, I would appreciate that. It's really just finding out how you feel about using Word. What do you feel your Word skills are? Nobody else is going to see how you answer this, so it's okay if you say that you're uncomfortable or you are fairly comfortable with it. Whichever you prefer answering, go right ahead. All right, so it looks like we are mostly beginners, or some people are moderately comfortable with it. So it sounds like we are all in the right place. If you were an expert using Word, you probably wouldn't need to take this class in the first place. So we'll go ahead and end that poll. It looks like almost everybody considers themselves a beginner or an extreme beginner. That's great. So that lets me know exactly where we should start when we're working with Word tonight. So what I'm going to do first is I did send each of you an email, and in that email, there were a couple of attachments. Those are the handouts for tonight's program. And in those attachments, there was a file that I want to work with. Now, if you're comfortable, you can actually open that file and work with it with me while we're going through it today on Zoom. Or I am going to send a recording of this class to you after class is over. So if you prefer to just watch what I'm doing, and then go back and watch that recording later and try it yourself, that's entirely up to you, whichever you feel most comfortable doing. The handouts that I also sent you, there should be one that says Microsoft Word 365 on the front of it. My camera is not mirrored, so my text is going to be backwards, but it kind of looks like this. Yours should be in color. But that handout does have every single skill and command that we're going to be discussing today is covered in that handout. So if you are going back over any of the different techniques that we tried tonight, you can go back to that handout and they are all described and covered in there. Also at the back of that Microsoft Word 365 handout, there's an extensive list of keystroke commands. Now we're going to be mainly working tonight with what's called the ribbons and tabs system in Microsoft Word, which is you will click on a little graphic in order to do most of the commands that we'll be discussing. But in Word, there's always more than one way to do something. So you will notice that as we go through and we hover over certain commands, it will tell you that you can hold down Control and Alt to do something, or Control C to do something. All of those keystrokes I have outlined at the end of that handout. So if you're interested in learning how to use keystrokes instead of having to click on icons on your window, you can absolutely do that. Alrighty, so I'm going to start out with sharing my screen with you. And the first screen I'm going to share is actually going to be my email, because I want to show you how to save the file that I sent you. So this is my email account. And I use, out here at the library, we use Microsoft Outlook. So when you receive the message from me, it should have looked very similar to this regardless of what email service you use. But you'll notice that there were those 3 files listed across the top. Now, to save the file that we will be working with tonight so that I can work with it on my own computer, I would come up to Gettysburg Address Example. That's the Word document we will be working with. And I would click on the drop-down arrow next to that. Now, if you're using something like Gmail or Yahoo Mail, there should be some place that says download, or sometimes there's an arrow pointing down. That also means download. That is what you want to click on because you want to download or save this file to your computer. So from my little drop-down menu, I'm going to choose Save As because I want to tell my computer exactly where to save it. But so that we're making sure we're all saving it in the same place tonight, I'm going to make sure it goes into my downloads folder. Normally, from any email, when you click the attachment and save it, it should go into your downloads folder. So I've selected downloads, and then I'm going to say save. So now I have saved a copy of that file to my computer. Now I can go to Word and I can start working with that file. So let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and open Word. And then I'm going to make sure you're seeing my Word screen, which is right here. Okay, so here at the library, we now use Microsoft Office 365. That is the newest version of all of the different Microsoft products. But if you have an older version of Word, it shouldn't look too much different than what we're looking at on our screen here. Now, right now, I am at the opening screen for Word. When I first open it, it's asking me what I want to work with or what I want to do. So on my screen, I'm seeing it says Word over here in the far left corner, tells me it's good evening because it's reading what time of day it is. But directly below good evening, I have the option to start a new blank document that would give me a blank clean sheet to start an entire new document from. Next to that, I also have several pre-formatted documents that are called templates. What a template does is it gives you all of the formatting that you will need for any document that you would want to work with. It gives you the formatting ahead of time, and you will simply add the text to the already established formatting. So if you look at some of the examples here, anytime you first open Word, you'll see some of these templates listed as available. So there are things like you can make a coloring book or a newspaper. You can do resumes. The nice thing about using templates is that you don't have to worry about if you formatted something properly. The formatting is already done. So to give you an example, I'm just going to open this resume example so you can see what it looks like. And it tells me, okay, you're going to make a clean, elegant resume that was produced by Microsoft Corporation. And this is what the layout is going to look like. It's going to show that you've got your contact information, your name, description about what your goals are or what you want to do. Sorry, I'm getting an email notification here. Go away, email. And you'll be able to fill out all of your education, all of your different experience. You would fill your information in there, save it and print it, or send it to whomever you want to share it with. To get started on any template, you would just click Create. It's going to open that template on the screen, and you would simply highlight the text that's already there, delete it, and add your own information to it. So that's really how a template works. When you get a chance, it's really worth it to look through all of the different template styles that are out there. There are quite a few. If I just show you real quick, this is just a quick view of some of them. There are some very, very nice templates. You can make your own business cards. You can make your own newsletters. You can make invitations, your own certificates. So having all of those templates available is really kind of a nice thing in Microsoft Word because you already have somebody who's established that formatting for you. So we're going to go back to the home button here over at Word. As soon as we clicked on more templates, it actually took us to the new button. But home is always that first view that we see when we first open Word. Now we could go again back to new, and that's going to let us choose a template. But from here, just below this list of templates, we now have a section that's called recommended for you. And it also has a search box. What Word is telling us here is we can search for a file that we would be able to type in either the topic of the file or the name of the file in the search box. Or we can see these recent files that I have worked with. If I wanted to just open something that I had recently opened, I could choose it from the list here. Below that, it's showing me a text list of recent files. So if you've worked with something recently, you should be able to find it fairly easily when you first open Word, because it should be in that list. Now, if you're not seeing the file that you want to work with, you're going to need to open your file manager and find the file that you want to work with. To do that, you're going to click the Open button over here at the left. And when we click that, it takes us into kind of an abridged file manager. On every one of your computers, you would have like mine is at the bottom here. It looks like a file folder. That's going to allow you to see all of the files that you have access to. This Open button will get you to that if you go to Browse, but this is kind of like they're trying to give you some hints or suggestions as to where you can look. Now, if you have Microsoft Office 365, you may have this option for OneDrive. OneDrive is actually cloud storage for your Microsoft account. Cloud storage means that it's not saved on your computer. It's actually saved on a remote computer someplace else, and that you can get to those files from any computer that you sit down at, as long as you sign into your Microsoft account. That's what cloud storage is. It means you can get to it from any computer as long as you know your login and password for your account. So OneDrive is cloud storage that is provided by Microsoft. But if you're searching your computer, the place that you're going to want to go is either going to be this PC or Browse. I do recommend that you use Browse. Personally, I think this is the easiest way to go and search on your computer. So I'm going to click Browse, and as soon as I do, I get the standard Microsoft File Manager. From here, I now need to go and look for where I saved that file to. Now, if you just clicked download on that email attachment, it's probably going to be right here in your downloads folder. Anything that you download to your computer, Microsoft tries to pigeonhole it into that downloads folder. If you're working on a Mac, it will also have a downloads folder, so you'll just want to look for that. So I know I saved mine in this folder, so I'm going to click there. And sure enough, here's the file that I saved. So to open it, I'm going to double click the file name. I can also single click and then click open. Either of those will work. But I'm going to double click, and that's going to open that file that I saved here in Microsoft Word. Now, when I first open it, because this was a file sent to me by someone else, I'm going to pretend I was somebody else in this case. It was sent by somebody else. It's going to say that it's in protected view. That's okay. Protected view just means that they're saying, you know, you're not making changes to it right now. You're just reading it, but you can make changes to it. And that's going to be this enable editing button. So anytime you see that yellow strip across the top that says protected view, simply look for enable editing and click there, and that will fully open the document for you. I'm going to have to share my screen with you again since I changed my window. There we go. Okay, so now we're back looking at my Microsoft Word screen, and this is the file that I sent you. It is actually just a plain text version of the Gettysburg Address, along with the instructions at the bottom for what we're going to do to this to make it look like a nicely formatted document. We're going to be using tools that are up here in the ribbons and tabs. Now, as I said before, the ribbons and tabs system is kind of the name of, I'm going to try to move my bar here a little higher. There we go. Kind of get it out of the way here. The ribbons and tabs is the name of the graphic interface that they now use in Microsoft Office. When we say ribbons and tabs, we mean this is the Home tab. The Home tab is connected to the Home ribbon of commands. If I click the Layout tab, the Layout tab is connected to a different ribbon of commands. So the Layout tab and the Layout ribbon is here. The Home tab and the Home ribbon is here. Each one of these commands, or each one of these tabs at the top where it says Insert, Draw, Design, they each have a different set of commands on their ribbon. For the most part tonight, we are going to be using the Home tab and the Layout tab Those will be the two ones that we really work with a lot tonight. We might use a couple of the other ones as we're talking about some additional features of Word. The only tab that looks different from these is going to be the File tab. The File tab will always take you back to that home or welcome screen that you first saw when you opened Microsoft Word. To get back to the document we are editing, we're just going to click this little arrow that's pointing to the left. That takes us back to the document. So as we go through this document tonight, when we get to the end of it, this is what it should look like. Let me make sure you're seeing that. There we go. This is the fully corrected, fully formatted version of the Gettysburg Address. And this is what the document that we currently have as a text document should look like when we're done. So this is what we're going to be working on this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and go back and reshare my Windows or my Word screen. There we go. Okay. So as I said, we're going to be working primarily with the Home tab and the Home ribbon and the Layout tab and the Layout ribbon. So let's go over a few things that we're seeing there so that it will help us as we start actually editing this document. On the Home tab, we have a lot of the most common commands that we use when we're typing up a document. Wouldn't matter if you're typing a letter or a paper or a report. This is usually the tab that you'll use most frequently. On the Home tab, we have things like our clipboard section, which allows us to copy and paste different text in our document. It also lets us format paint sections so that we can have a section look a particular way. Next to that, we have the font section. The font section is going to allow us to change the font style. Right now, the default is Calibri, size 11. It will also let us bold, italicize, or underline text. You'll notice that as I'm hovering over each of those different buttons, it says underline and then Control+U and tells you that this is going to underline your text. So if you're not sure what any of these buttons or commands do along the ribbon, hover over it and you're going to get a little pop-up window that's going to tell you what that button will do if you use it. If I hover over paste, it says I can add content to the clipboard so I can add it to my document. It also tells me Control+V. Rather than clicking the button up here in the ribbon, I could hit Control and the letter V on my keyboard, and it's going to do the exact same thing. So if I wanted to bold something just using my keyboard, I would just hold down Control and tap B, and then anything that I typed after that is going to be in bold. I could also highlight some text and then do Control B, and it's going to highlight the text that I highlighted. So when you're making changes or formatting your document, there's two ways really to do it at any time. You can click on the command up in the ribbon before you start typing, or you can type the text and then go back and highlight what you want to format and use either the keystroke or use the ribbon to make that change. So you're either going to say to your document, do this now, and then start typing, or you're going to highlight and say, now do this to this selected text. Now, next to our bold, italicize, and underline, we also have our font size indicator here. We can actually make our font quite a bit bigger or smaller if we want to. We can add superscript or subscript or superscript to our font. So if we need to have like if you wanted to be able to say like X squared or something, or you wanted to put a footnote, you can do that. This we're not going to worry about too much tonight, but this lets you do different text effects. This would allow you to use a highlighter. You could go through and highlight different text so you could come back or be alerted to it later. And this lets you choose your font color. The default font color is going to be black because the paper is white, but you can always go back and actually choose a whole bunch of different font colors to use. Now this little letter, or excuse me, the larger letter A with the arrow pointing upwards. Clicking this will make your font bigger by one step, so one size. Clicking the smaller letter A with the arrow pointing down will make whatever your font is one step down or one size smaller. This right here is going to allow you to change the case of your letter. You can actually click that if you had accidentally typed something all in caps. You could go back and actually change the case to lowercase if you wanted to. And this right here is going to allow you to clear all of your formatting. So if you went in and you did some formatting and you don't like how it looks, you could highlight a section, click the remove formatting, and it's going to take all of the bolding, italics, tabs, anything like that out of your document. Now, the next section is the paragraph section. This actually allows us to format the paragraph that we're working with. And it will allow us to do different things like add bullet points to our text. Clicking the drop down arrow will actually let you see the different bullets that you can choose. You'll notice that it starts to preview right away. When I click it, it's trying to guess if I'm trying to put a bullet point there. I'm not going to, so we'll just click off of it. The next one will allow you to number a list. Every time you press enter or return, if you're used to using a typewriter, enter is the same as return. Every time you press enter, it's going to allow you to put another number at the beginning. So you'll see a number every time you press return or enter. This is going to allow you to create a multi-level list or an outline. So if you were trying to create an outline, you would be able to click here and you're going to be able to pick the format and then decide what each different section is going to look like. The next section right here, click off of that, is where you can increase your indent right here, increase indent or decrease indent. So if you've pressed tab, your tab key on your keyboard, if you ever used a typewriter, tab always moves you over 5 spaces. This would take you back 5 spaces or move you forward 5 spaces. So it's going to let you increase or decrease your indent. A to Z is just going to let you alphabetize a list. We won't really be working with that this evening. But this little icon right here is super important. And this is one of the top 10 things that I hope you take away from here tonight. Using this format marker, it lets you see paragraph marks. It lets you see returns or tabs. This can really save you when you're noticing that you're having format issues. If you are typing a document and there's text that's straggling on a page, or you have an extra blank sheet of paper at the end of your document, clicking this button can show you all of the different places where you still have formatting marks in your document, and it'll let you go back and very easily get rid of them. So if I'm just going to give you an example right now, if I click the show formatting, I can now see all of these paragraph markers. That's every time I've hit enter on my keyboard. I can also see every time I've hit tab, that looks like an arrow. Every space looks like a little dot. So I'm able to see exactly why my document is formatted the way that it is. If I click it again, it shuts that off and I'm just seeing the regular text again. When we get to the end of formatting this paragraph tonight, I'll show you how to use that tool and why it really helps. Now, below that, we have our alignment. You can actually choose the justification or alignment of your document. You can do left justification, which is what most of us are used to when we're reading. Your text is lined up on the left side of the page. Center justification is going to center all of the text. It's going to line everything up, and so it's all kind of adjusted toward the center. Right justification is going to align all of your text across the right-hand side. So new lines are all going to line up along the right. Full justification, which is this one right here, full justification is going to make sure your text is evenly spaced out across the entire section. If you look at our text right here right now in the Gettysburg Address, it is actually full justified. It's neither right or left justified or centered. It is completely fully justified across the page, but we're going to change that when we go in and change our document. This little doohickey right here, this little button, is the line and paragraph spacing. And this is going to allow you to change the line spacing very quickly in your document. You can set it to 1 space, 1.15 spaces, which is actually the default now in Microsoft Word, 1.5, 2, and so on. You can also tell Word that you want to add a space before a paragraph or a space after a paragraph. Selecting any of those settings will change the current text that you're working with. We're not going to worry too much about the paint can tonight because we are really not changing the fill color of anything. But if we had shaded a section of our document or highlighted a section of our document and wanted it to have a different shading, or if we had entered a table into our document and we wanted some of the cells to be different colors, we could use the paint can tool for that and add different shading to our table. That's also what this little icon here is for. This one is going to allow you to put borders around your text or around your table selections. We're not going to work with tables tonight, but if we did, this is where we would actually be able to go in and format that. Now this style section in the center up here, and it takes up a big chunk of the home ribbon, but this one allows you to choose a preset format for your document. It lets you choose like what your font's going to look like, what your headings are going to look like. You can select a section of text and say, I want to make sure I label this as being a heading, or I want to make sure I label this as being a title. We're not going to use this tonight because I want you to learn how to do all of them yourself using the different tools up on the ribbon, but you can use this and set different sections of your document to be a specific type of entry. This can be nice if you go back later and you're doing any kind of indexing. Setting something as a heading or as a subtitle can really help you when you go back and try to create a table of contents. Finally, at the very end over here, actually, I'm going to go back to home. What we're going to do, sorry, I'm trying to move this box down. There we go. I'm going to get rid of my search box. What we can do at the very end here, these are our editing tools. So we have things like find. If you have a long document and you're trying to find every time you mentioned a particular topic, find is such a useful tool for that. You would click the find button and then you get a pop-up menu over here at the side. So if you wanted to be able to go back and change a particular word throughout your document or just verify a particular word throughout your document, you would be able to find it and go through here very quickly and find every occurrence of it. So we have a very short document here, but let's say I was looking for the word can. If I type in can, it shows me right here every occurrence of every time I used the word can in my document. To go to that, I can see right here, oh, there it is right there. There's another one right here. There's another one right here. This can really quickly help you scan through your document and go and find all of the locations where you talked about something or where you used a particular word. And that's just by clicking that find button. Now, this replace is very similar to find, because what replace does is it lets you go through and look for every time. Oh, does my screen sharing keep pausing? I keep getting a little, sorry about that. If that happens, if you're not seeing what I'm talking about, please just raise your hand and let me know. It does kind of keep flashing that it's getting rid of my screen sharing. So I want to make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. Replace allows you to search for words in your document, just like what we did with find, but it lets you replace it with another word. Now, what find and replace is great for, in my opinion, is if you are doing cover letters, resumes, or anything where you want to make sure that you go back and find and replace a particular word and replace it with another one. So just as an example, let's say you're applying for a job at Abbott and you're also applying for a job at Baxter. You want to tailor your cover letter and your resume to reflect skills that would be important at either of those organizations. But when you send your resume to Abbott, you want it to talk about Abbott. When you send your resume to Baxter, you want it to talk about Baxter. So the way that you can actually do that very quickly would be to type in the first word that you already had the letter made for, find all the occurrences of that word and replace it with the other word. So you could do a search for all the times you talked about Abbott and replace it with Baxter. Now, one caution for doing that is make sure that you also do it with a plural. It should find every single occurrence, but you want to make sure that you don't miss anything. So do it as a singular search and then also as a plural, just to make sure. So that allows you to find text and replace it really quickly, all with one keystroke. It would change every single word in your document from what you found to what you wanted to replace it with. The select button right here, You don't really have to use this because you can use your mouse to select text. Select lets you select all of your text, though, which is kind of nice. If you wanted to make a change to everything, say you wanted to change your font throughout the entire document, you could choose select all. And instead of having to hold your mouse button down and select everything, it will let you choose all of the text, and then you can go back and make any changes to it. So select, you can do with your mouse, but if you want to select everything, you can go back and select all, and it will choose your entire document. Dictate, this is actually something fairly new in Word, and it works pretty well, but it's not perfect. Dictate is actually going to allow you to turn this on so you can speak through your microphone on your computer, and Microsoft Word will try to write down exactly what you're saying. Now, there's obviously a little bit of a learning curve there, and it's not always going to get it right. If you've ever tried to use something like Google Voice, it can actually be kind of funny, the things that it thinks you said. So if you're using Dictate, just always make sure you really go back and really read it over, because the computer might think you said something differently than how you thought you said it. So editor is actually going to allow you to mark up a document for editing so that you can give it back to somebody, let you highlight different places or place little text boxes to say whether you liked something or disliked something. We really won't be using that tonight, but it's just kind of a nice tool to have. Reuse files is really going to let you reuse parts of a document in another document. So those are the main little commands that we have up on our home ribbon. If we go to our layout tab, you can see that we have some different formatting options on here that we will be talking about in just a second. Right here under layout, we actually have the option to set our margins. The default for your document varies depending on what your preferences are, but the office default for any document used to be 1 inch at the top and 1 inch at the bottom, 1.2 inches at either side. Normal is now considered like 1 inch all the way around. But you can actually set your document to have whatever margins you want it to have. So you can have narrow margins, moderate margins. You can even go into custom margins, and you can set your margins to whatever you want it to be. Keep in mind, though, anything below 0.3 inches is going to probably give your printer fits. Unless you have an edge-to-edge printer, sending your margins lower than that is going to make your printer struggle to get it on the page properly. So if you want to try to cram as much information as you possibly can onto a single sheet of paper, you can do that. But I do recommend that normally you keep it at about either a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Next to that, we have orientation. This is the paper orientation for your document. The standard paper orientation is portrait, just like a picture. It would just be straight up and down like that. You can also set it to landscape. That would be turning the page on its side. Page size. This is important. If you are trying to print something that is a legal document, you may find that you have to change your paper size to 8.5 by 14. Standard paper size is 8.5 by 11. Legal paper, though, is 8.5 by 14. So if you have a legal document and you've downloaded it to your computer and you go to try to print it in your regular printer, but you don't have legal size paper, it's going to print kind of weird. It'll probably either try to cram everything onto a single page and shrink your font up, or it's going to ask you to put in another piece of paper and it will print the rest on a second page. For the most part, you're not going to use most of these other sizes unless you're using something like labels. If you are using labels, it'll tell you what paper size to choose. It usually has that right on the front of the label package as to how you should set your paper size. But we're going to leave ours at letter because that's the standard size. Next would be columns. We aren't going to put any columns in our document tonight, but you can add columns into any document on Word. You can do that using the columns drop-down button. Right now we're set to a single column, but we can set to 2, 3, or go into more columns and set as many columns as we want. Now keep in mind, on a single sheet of paper, you're probably not going to be able to fit that many columns. So if you're picking 5 columns, your text is going to be very squished. But you can also set up a single column to be at the left or the right. So if you're trying to have like text in the margin, you could do that and have a left or right column too. All righty, so I'm not going to get too much into line breaks tonight. However, you may notice sometimes that you have a document that maybe somebody else has given you. And when you're trying to type something on a page, it only lets you like type something on like maybe an inch or two of the page, and then it suddenly shifts to the next page. What's happened there, somebody has inserted a page break or a line break. What a break does is it says, don't let anybody type anything below this section on this page. Now, page breaks will show up when you turn on that paragraph symbol on the home tab. So if you ever are experiencing that and you're trying to figure out, why can't I type here? Why is this shifting me immediately over to the next page? Turn on that paragraph marker. It will tell you if there is a page or section break there. You can delete those section breaks and it will let you go back and continue typing. All right, so the rest of this is indent and your paragraph markers. Don't worry too much about this. It is set to the current left indent is going to be 0.25. After a paragraph or a sentence, it's 8 points. That's fairly standard. You can go in and change that if you have a preference, if you want there to be more spaces between paragraphs or sentences. If you'd like the left margin or the left indent to be a little bit bigger, you can always go in and change that. But this is the standard. And when you're first getting started, it's really probably a good idea to leave it alone at standard. Now, the last tab that I want to talk about before we actually start trying to format our document here is the review tab. The review tab has some really useful tools that you're going to want to make sure that you use. Things like spelling and grammar check. Spelling and grammar check are going to allow you to go back and see if you have any spelling issues or grammar issues in your document. You can see right now in my document, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's kind of underlined right here. That's saying that Microsoft thinks there's something wrong with that. So when we start going back and looking through our document, this is actually where we're going to come and choose this spelling and grammar, and it's going to tell us if there's issues that we need to correct, and we can either choose to correct them or not. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go back to our home tab because we're going to get started now with actually altering and editing our document here. Now, each of the different steps that I'm going to be undertaking now are written out in the instructions section right here. So what I'm doing step by step, I wrote a description of it under each one of these sections. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to do that on the screen. So the first thing that we want to do with our document is we want to set the entire document to double spaced. Now, as I said before, we can select our entire document by going up to the Home tab and on the Home ribbon and going to Select and then Select All. That's going to highlight all of the text that we have on the page. Now, I don't actually want to format my instructions here because when we get to the end of this, I'm going to delete those. So as nice as it is to be able to say select all, I'm not going to do that for what I want to do on my document today. Since I'm really just formatting this first section, I'm going to highlight it using my mouse. So to do that, I put my mouse cursor right at the very beginning of the document, right in front of the G in Gettysburg. As soon as I put it there, you'll notice my arrow turns from an arrow to now being an I bar. That I bar is your insertion point. That's why it looks like a letter I. It's telling you this is your insertion point. If you click here, this is where anything that you insert into your document is going to go. So I'm going to hold down my left mouse button, and I'm just going to drag across this paragraph down to the bottom and end right at the end of where it says Abraham Lincoln. And then I let go. That lets me select all of this text. Now, whatever command I choose up here on the ribbon, it's going to affect just this text. So I want to set this to double spaced. So to do that, I come up to my Home tab, and in the paragraph section, I'm going to click the line spacing tool. I'm going to click the drop down arrow next to it, and I'm going to choose 2.0 because I want that section of the document to be double spaced. So as soon as I click, Now that entire section is now double spaced. Everything that I had highlighted is the only area that is now double spaced. The rest of it is still single spaced. So our next step is going to be to set our page margins. Now I want to try to get the entire Gettysburg Address onto a single page. So to do that, I want to set my margins to be 0.5 on all sides. Right now it should be 1 inch on all sides. So to change my margins, I need to go to the Layout tab. So on the Layout tab, I see right here, here's my option for margins. It's the very first one there. I'm going to click the drop-down arrow under Margins. And the second choice right here is Narrow, and that is 0.5 on all sides. 0.5 is going to allow me to be able to print something still very easily, and it's going to give me more space on my page. So I'm going to choose 0.5. As soon as I do that, the entire document has now been changed to that 0.5 margin. So I can see my margins are much smaller than they were before, and suddenly my document's shorter because I have more text on each sheet. So that's how we go in and change the margins. I do want to point out real quick, if you can't remember which tab something is on, or if you can't remember what the actual button looks like or where you saw it, you can always do that by going up to the search box here at the top, clicking in the search box and then typing in what you're trying to do. Like if you're trying to find your paragraph settings, or if you're trying to justify something, or you want to look at your paragraph spacing, you could type in that keyword, and then it's going to allow you to see the information on how to do that. If I click paragraph settings, it's going to open that menu for me. So anytime you're not sure, the little search box up here will let you look for those commands. Okay, so now our next choice our next instruction is going to be to set the font of our document here to Bookman Old Style 12 point. Now our current font, if we go back to our Home tab, our current font is Calibri and it's set to 11. So we need to change the font size and style for this first section of the document. So once again, I'm going to put my insertion point right at the very beginning, and I'm going to hold my mouse button down, my left mouse button. And I drag down to the bottom and let go. Now, whatever change I make to this section is going to affect just that section. Now, you'll notice as soon as I had selected all of that before, I got a little pop-up menu. In fact, let me show you that again so you can see it. As soon as I finished highlighting this and I let go, I actually have this little pop-up menu that showed up right here. This is a shortcut bar. It's really kind of a little snapshot of what I'm seeing up at the top in my home ribbon. I can actually change my font style and size right here. I don't even have to go all the way up to the ribbon because this little shortcut bar popped up for me. So you can always feel free to use that shortcut bar. If you're more comfortable going up and changing your font style up on the ribbon, you can do it either way. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to look for Bookman Old Style font. That is the font style that I want to use. Now, the nice thing is all of the different fonts are alphabetized in Microsoft Word. So right here is Bookman Old Style. So I'm going to select that font style. Now, before I click anything else, I also have to change the font size. So to do that, once again, I come up to my ribbon. I'm going to choose 12. And now I have just changed that font size and style for the entire selection. So we can see it's already looking a little bit different. It's definitely bigger. And we're able to see all of the text a little bit more clearly. Now our next job is going to be, let me move this up so it's not in our way. Next job is going to be to press enter at the end of the title to double space the title line. Now that sounds a little cumbersome. What I want us to really do is I want us to separate the title here from the rest of this document. So to do this, we're going to take our insertion point, our I bar here, and I'm going to click right at the end of the title. That's the Gettysburg Address. So what I'm going to do now is, just like the instructions say, is press enter at the end of the title. What that does is I press enter on my keyboard and it separates the text right here from the text that we had for the rest of the body of the document. Now, as soon as I did that, I can see I actually look like I have an extra space here, and I can actually clean that up a little bit. I'm just going to press backspace. Backspace always moves your cursor in your text over to the left one space. Delete on your keyboard always gets rid of something or moves something over to the right. So backspace goes to the left, delete goes to the right. So I was able to backspace, and that got rid of an extra space there. So now Gettysburg Address is all by itself here. Now I want to format my title. I want my title, remember, to be centered, and I want it to look like this document here. This is what it's supposed to look like. So I'm going to want it centered. It looks like it's bolded and underlined. So we're going to do that now. Let's go ahead and go back to our other doc. Okay, so to do that, we're going to follow our steps here. Number 5, the title needs to be centered, written in 18-point Bookman old style font in bold and underlined. So the first thing we want to do is center this font. Now, to do that, we're going to highlight and select just the title. So with my insertion point again, I'm going to drag across and just choose the title. I'm going to now go up to the paragraph settings, and I'm going to click the center button. That takes me up and it centers the title for me. Now, I still need to highlight it again because there's more changes to be made. I need to change the font size. We already have the right style. It's already Bookman old style, but I need to change the font size to 18. So we've changed the font size. Now we also want it to be bold and underlined. So all of those changes, all we have to do is select the text that we want it to happen to, that we want to change. And then using our tools up here on the ribbon, we can say, make this font look this way. So now we've got the Gettysburg Address. It's centered, it's bolded, and it's underlined. So it's definitely obvious and it stands out. Our next option is going to be the beginning of paragraph should be indented and separated. Now, when I copied and pasted this into this document, I made sure to indicate where the paragraphs are by adding a slash in front of each paragraph. I did that on purpose because I want to make sure that we are able to quickly identify our paragraphs and then set them off separately. Now, when we hit Gettysburg Address before and I pressed enter, it actually set off that first line automatically. But the first thing I want to do is get rid of that slash. So I can do it 2 ways again. I can use my delete or I can use my backspace. If I want to use delete, I'm going to click right at the very beginning, put my insertion point. That's where that blinking cursor is. If I press delete on my keyboard now, it's going to get rid of whatever is on the right side of my cursor. So pressing delete got rid of that slash. I'm going to show you how to do it with backspace. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to show you a really nice tool to keep in mind while you're doing any kind of formatting. At the very top of our screen here, you'll notice that there's this arrow and the blue. It's right next to the image of a floppy disk, but there's this arrow and it's going off to the left. That's the undo button. Undo undoes the last thing that you did. So if I press undo, it gets rid of the last keystroke that I made. It gets rid of me deleting that slash. If I now want to redo what I just did, as soon as I undo something, you'll now notice I have an arrow going off to the right. That's redo. Redo redoes what you just undid. So just like it sounds, if I hit redo, it's going to get rid of the slash again. This is a nice thing to keep in mind because if you're trying to decide what kind of formatting looks best, or if you're typing away and you look up at your screen and you're like, whoa, what did I do? Something doesn't look right here. You can hit undo and it's going to undo the last thing that you did. Now, conceivably, you can keep hitting undo and it will keep undoing the last thing that you did. You can go backwards from the last time you fully saved your document and opened it and keep undoing it until you get back to what the document looked like when you started. So keep in mind, undo and redo can really be very, very helpful when you're first learning how to do formatting or when you're testing out how different things might look on your page. Now I'm going to show you how to use the backspace to get rid of that slash. If you wanted to use backspace instead of delete, you could use your insertion point and click right in between the F and the slash. And I could just use the backspace key to get rid of it then. So it's up to you, whichever way is preferable, you can do it either way. Now we need to tab in the beginning of this paragraph so that it's indented the way a paragraph is supposed to be. So to do that, we already have our preset tabs. We're going to press the tab key on our keyboard. So that's just a single tab, and it will take you out to the first tab marker, the first 5 spaces. You could also use the increase indent buttons and decrease indent buttons to go back and forth with this. So if you prefer to use your keyboard, pressing tab is going to indent you 5 spaces. The increase indent button will also work up on your ribbon. So now we've got our first paragraph is offset and it's indented. Now we need to do the same thing to the next paragraph. So once again, we're going to come down to the next slash mark. I'm just going to click next to the slash, and I'm just going to press the delete key. That gets rid of the slash for me. And then I can press tab on my keyboard. Doesn't look like I have any more slashes, so those are my only 2 paragraphs. So using, again, the tab key to move yourself in 5 spaces, or to use that increase indent will move you in 5 spaces. All right, so now our next task is that we want to offset the signature line. So it says the signature line should be separated from the body of the document by 2 spaces, left justified, and written in bold and italics in 14-point Bookman old style font. So to do that, we need to go and find the signature line. So we know that the Gettysburg Address was written by Abraham Lincoln. So if I come to the bottom, I can see right here, it says Abraham Lincoln. So to separate that, I'm going to click right in front of that text, put my insertion point right in front of Abraham. Now I'm just going to press enter on my keyboard. That separates it by 2 spaces. Now, it automatically indented it for me. Now that's nice and helpful, except I didn't want it indented. So what I can do is I can actually just hit backspace and it's going to get rid of that indent for me. So now we have that line offset. Now we also need to make sure it's left justified, which we just did. And we want to go and put it in bold, italics, and 14-point Bookman old style font. So we're going to select this entire signature line. We want to make sure that we're including this copy handwritten information. We want to make sure it's all offset. Actually, you know what? Looks like I wanted that to be separate. So we're going to do that differently. I'm going to go right by in front of where it says copy handwritten, because we're going to actually do this a little differently. So we're not going to select all of it. So it's just going to be Abraham Lincoln and then the November 19th, 1863. That's all we're going to select. And that we're going to change. So this is going to be Bookman old style font 14. We're going to do that bold and italicized. We're not underlining it, but we're just bolding and italicizing it. That is telling us this is the date it was written. This is the person who wrote it. Now, the next step says that we want to include the copy handwritten line, but place it 1 space below the signature line and remove the parentheses. So again, to do that, it's just going to be press enter on our keyboard. That moves it down 1 space. Then we're going to get rid of the parentheses. So at the very end, we can click and then press backspace or delete. Click at the very beginning, and I'm just going to press delete. So now it's telling us that it wants us to go through and make sure that we have gotten rid of all of our review errors, any of our spelling mistakes. We want to make sure we check for all of our punctuation. We want to make sure everything looks really good here. So we're going to come up to the top and we're going to go to the review tab. The review tab is right here. And we are going to go to spelling and grammar. Clicking this ABC with the green arrow, Clicking there opens the editor for us. I'm going to move our little window here so you can see what I'm doing. This is the editor window over here along the right-hand side. When we're in the editor window, we can actually go through now and look at each instance where Word is telling us that it thinks there's a problem. Now, in the original text for the Gettysburg Address, this is actually how Abraham Lincoln wrote battlefield. Now, that was a colloquialism of the time. We don't spell battlefield like that anymore, so we could probably go back and change it. If we wanted to be real sticklers and leave it exactly how Abraham Lincoln had it, we could do that too. But we can see that this is a different text style and it's suggesting that we change it. So that's fine. We can go ahead and do that. We're going to change battle-field to battlefield. So to do that, it's telling us this is the word it's looking at. This is the suggestion down here. We're going to click the suggestion and you'll see it automatically changes it and then moves on. Here's battlefield right here. It has now changed that text and we've moved on to the next issue. So I'm going to say resume checking corrections. The next section, oh, we missed a paragraph. I'm glad we did this. I can see the other paragraph marker here. We'll fix that in just a second. So in the larger sense, it's telling us that can and not should not be spelled like that. It's suggesting that we do cannot, C-A-N-N-O-T is one word. So again, we're going to choose cannot. Tell us again, there's another one. Nope, you really should be using cannot here. Again, one more. We really should be using cannot here. So we'll do it one more time. Now it's telling me to go to the home tab. We don't need to correct my instructions. It only is saying home is because it's capitalized, but we finished the document. So since we finished the document, we can actually close this now because we've done all of our original text. Now, if you are going through a document and you have things like proper names like it didn't find Abraham as being a misspelling or not recognized word because Abraham's a common name, and it also tends to have the names of famous people included in here. But if you find a proper name, like somebody's first name or last name, or even a very specific word that might be even written in a different language, you can actually tell the spell check to ignore something. So frequently I will have a spell check tell me over and over again that my name is spelled wrong. It always wants to put an A in it for some reason, but I can just tell it to ignore it, and it will then ignore that word every other time it sees it. So if you have a word and you're saying, no, I really think it should be spelled that way, you can tell it to ignore it and it will continue to ignore that. When you've reviewed everything, you would go back and just hit the X in the corner and that closes the editor. Now, it's a good thing that we went through that corrections because we did notice that we have another paragraph here. So we have another slash right next to but, so we need to get rid of that. I'm going to click right in front of the letter B. And I'm going to backspace to get rid of that slash, but now we need to set it as another paragraph. So I'm going to press enter. And because we were already doing 5 space tabs, again, Word is assuming that I mean to start another paragraph here, and it indented it for me. So there we go. We have it all nicely indented, but we still have all of our instructions along the bottom here. We don't need these instructions anymore because we want to go back and get rid of this. We can highlight them and delete them. So to get rid of all of the instructions, what I'm going to do is put my insertion point right at the beginning of instructions. I'm going to highlight it across and select everything. And then I'm going to press delete on my keyboard. All of that deleted text is going to be gone. Now, every so often you will notice in a document that you have this. You have all of your text on one page. And then right here, you have a blank page. Now, as I said earlier, there's a really easy way to go back and check that. And that is going to be on the Home tab. Go to the Home ribbon, and in the paragraph section, turn on the little paragraph marker here. When you turn on that paragraph marker, what it does is it shows you all the different places where it's saying, hey, you either press enter here or you press tab here. This is why you have spaces. So on our document, I can see now, oh, I have a stray enter here or a stray return. It thinks that I was trying to add spaces there. Word doesn't assume that you did not mean to have that there. They think you want that blank page there. So to get rid of that, again, we can turn on the paragraph marker and see that that's why that space is like that. We can simply click our insertion point by that paragraph marker, press backspace, and it should get rid of it. We could even press backspace on each of these and get rid of them too, because we really don't need those extra returns there. So when we're done, we simply turn off the paragraph marker, and now we've got our fully formatted and set up document. So we can see that there's still a few little dashed lines here telling us that it doesn't quite like the diction style or the language style that's being used. But again, we're going to go ahead and let Abraham have his way with most of these because it is a pretty good speech. So, but that's really the basics of how you're going to use different tools that you're seeing up in the Home tab and Home ribbon to format your document. Now, I wanted to go over a couple of other things real quick that I know a lot of people get tripped up over in Word. One of them is headers and footers. Headers and footers allow you to have repeated text or sometimes alternating text appearing on different pages of your document. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back and add those returns in so we have an extra page. And I'm going to show you what a header and footer does and how you might need to work with them. Now, if we come up here again, we've got our tabs. We're going to go this time to the Insert tab. The Insert tab is right next to Home. And when we click it, we can see that we now have a way to add lots of different aspects or tools or graphs, different images to our document. From here, we're actually going to come all the way down to the end here to where it says Header and Footer. This is actually where you can add things like page numbers to your document, but a header and footer would allow you to do things like have your name and then also the page number appearing in your document. So if you have to turn in a paper for school or somebody tells you they want to make sure that there's an indication of what report this is on every single page, you could add that information to your document. Now to do that, you would go to the header and footer. Headers are going to be at the top of the page. Footers are going to be at the bottom of the page. To insert a header or footer, you're going to click the header button. And what it does is it lets you choose what kind of style or where you want that header or footer to appear. So you can have this one where it actually has where you would put it in the upper left-hand corner. This is going to put it across 3 columns so you can have 3 separate entries like your name, the date, and your page number. This is a very specific one that puts it in kind of blue. It's a page border. You can even do it on even pages or odd pages. If you click down here, it lets you find more of these like preset formatted header styles from Office, but you can also go in and edit the header. That's going to allow you to make changes to it after you've created one. So I'm going to start right here in this first one. I'm going to add a header. And what you'll notice is as soon as I click add that header, I now have a space at the top of each page, and it's showing me I can type the text that I want to appear in the header here. I also now have a very different ribbon that I'm looking at. As soon as I insert a header, I now have a whole nother tab for headers and footers and a whole new ribbon of commands to be able to format those. So let's say I wanted to make sure that I was numbering my pages. I could do that. I would be able to come over here and say that I want it to be a page number. I'm going to say I want it to be at the top of the page, bottom of the page, side of the page. It would let me put that page number in, and I can do that in addition to having my header. If I just wanted to have some text at the top of each page, though, I can do that too. I'd be able to click here and type the text that I wanted. If I just wanted it to say Rachel, you'll notice it says the same thing on both pages. Here it says Rachel, and here it says Rachel. Using my ribbon up here, though, I can change how that looks. I can actually go to have it say I want a different first page header, or I want different odd and even pages. If I do different first page header, I can actually have this first page say something completely different. Frequently on school papers or reports for different companies, they will tell you not to have anything in the header on the first page. You would just leave it blank, and that's going to let you have that first page look different than every subsequent page. So that different first page will let you set that up. If you need different odd and even pages, you can do that too, and it will let you choose what is on each alternating page. You can even choose where you want your header to appear. It can be 0.5 inches from the top. That's where it's set right now. If I'd rather it be even closer to the top of the page, I can do that too. Just keep in mind that 0.3 rule. If you get too close to the margins of your page, sometimes your printer is not going to like trying to print that. So you can actually go to the next footer. If you want every footer to be a little bit different, you go to the next page and make alterations to it. You can even have it insert the date and time as part of your header or your footer. So now when I'm done working with my header, I'm going to say close. So now my first page doesn't have any header because I said I wanted a different first page and I didn't enter anything there. Now I have my header appearing on my second page. If I wanted to insert a footer, I would go to, again, the Insert tab. I would choose Footer, and I get the same choices. It's asking me where it wants all the footer information on the page. I would simply choose where I want it. I could come back again and say different first page, different second page, and type whatever text I wanted there. The biggest issue a lot of people have when they start trying to do headers and footers or even page numbers is skipping that first page. So always make sure that you are looking to make sure that it's a different first page. If you're strictly doing page numbers, I'm going to show you what that looks like. If I'm strictly doing page numbers, I could say that I want it at the top of the page, like over at the left-hand side. But notice it had a different number from the first page and it's starting at page 2. That's actually good. That's exactly what I would want it to do. Sometimes it starts trying to number from the first page and you may not want it to do that. You can change that by going into the page number and say format page numbers, and it's going to let you say what the number format should be. You can say that you want it to start from a previous section or continue from a previous section, or you can say that you want it to start at a different number. So if you wanted to skip the first page, if your first page is a title page, you could have it start at number 1 on the next page, and it will do that. So when you run into problems with headers and footers and page numbers, know that you're in good company. A lot of people have trouble with this, especially the first few times they try to do it. But it's always going to be under that Insert tab. As soon as you add a header or footer or page number, you're going to get that header and footer tab, and you'll be able to go in and edit it using the ribbon. Anytime you want to exit the header or footer, you would just hit the X and that closes it. So the last thing that I wanted to point out to you is it's also on the Insert tab, but you may at different times want to be combining things like a table from Excel or just table data from Excel with a document that you're working with in Word. You can do that really easily. That is, again, under the Insert tab. And you can see right here that it's going to allow you to insert a table. You can also go into Excel and copy a section of a table or a spreadsheet and paste it into your document. But going to this table tool right here will allow you to actually change it and kind of edit it a little bit. So you can add a lot of different factors to your document. You can go in and do just regular formatting, but you could also make sure it has headers and footers, and you could add different elements like tables or charts. You can even add pictures to them as well. Now, that's really the basics of what we're going to go over tonight. I do want to tell you about a couple of tools, though, that will help you if you want to continue learning about Microsoft Word. These are super important because what we just went over tonight is fairly simple, but you may feel like you need to know it a lot better. Like you need to really know how to use Microsoft Word and you need to know it front to back. If that's the case, the library has a couple of tools that I really recommend to you. The first one is called Gale Courses. It is a paid database that the library subscribes to. I'll show you how to get to it from our library's website. I'm going to share that website with you so you can see what we're doing. From the library's website, which is wnpl.info, From the Discover tab, we actually have a list of all of the databases that the library subscribes to. If we go to all databases, there's a nice list of everything that you can get for free with your library card. But scrolling down, we're going to go to where it says Gale Courses. Gale Courses is a service that we subscribe to, and it allows Warren-Newport cardholders to take 6-week instructor-led classes online. So you would be able to take a class that actually meets 4 hours per week, 2 different times per week. You don't necessarily have to do it on the date that they actually meet. They'll usually have classes on like Wednesdays and Fridays, but you don't have to do it on Wednesday and Friday. They'll send you the curriculum and you can do it really anytime that you have the time to do it. But you will follow along with the curriculum. They will send you assignments and sample Word documents to work with. And you will learn the ins and outs of how to make Microsoft Word work. Now, again, this is a 6-week-long course, so it is going to be about 24 hours of total work by the time you're done. But if you really want to know how to make Word really work for you, it's a great way to do that. Now, if you don't have 6 weeks to donate to, or to dedicate to a specific class, we completely understand that. There's another service that we subscribe to that's called LinkedIn Learning. Now, this is associated with the LinkedIn website, where you can actually post your resume and other job information and connect with other people out there in the business world. But LinkedIn Learning offers much shorter, kind of more digestible lessons for using different technology products that you might work with in your business life. So if we click on Get Started, it is going to ask for a library card number. So I'm just going to type one in here. And a PIN. Your PIN number, if you're ever wondering, is the phone number that you have on your library account. So if you're ever asked for your library PIN, and I did that wrong, let's try that again. Okay. It is the phone number on your library account, but without the area code. So just the last 7 digits. But this is what LinkedIn Learning looks like. What you can see here is that there's a little search box at the top, and then they have some top picks. I have signed into this before, so it's actually suggesting different classes for me based on what my interests are. But I can go in and search for classes on things like pivot tables. I can go in and look for Microsoft Word and find all of the different classes that will teach me how to use Word. So this is like the Word Essential Training for Office 365. Looking at this entry, it tells me that this is a 2-hour and 10-minute class. And I can actually go right from here on this page, click on the class, and it's going to let me see it. I don't want it to play just yet, but all of the courses in LinkedIn Learning feature a video. So it's going to be a video instruction. You have a really nice table of contents that will appear along the left-hand side. So if you're looking at a section that you already know how to do, or you want to go back and review a section that kind of confused you, you can move back and forth within the lesson just by clicking on the different section. So if you wanted to review more about saving documents, you could click on that one. If you wanted to go find more about copying text from another source, you could go to that lesson. In this lesson, they also have a transcript, so you can both read and follow along by watching the text while you're listening to the video. I personally am somebody that remember what I read better than what I might see in a video, so being able to follow along in the transcript is really useful for me. It also has all of the exercise files that you will need to complete this class. And when you finish it, you actually get a certificate that tells you that you finished that course, and you can post that on your LinkedIn profile saying that you finished that class. So it's a really great way to be able to go in and get a much shorter, quicker, but just as effective lesson on how to use something like Word or Excel. If you go in and you look at all the different topics that they have available, they actually have quite a few, and they even have certificate programs through LinkedIn Learning where if you take a series of classes, they issue you a certificate saying that you have been certified, say, in Microsoft Word or in Excel. But you can learn about cloud computing. They even have different data science courses, database management, mobile development, software development, network administration. There's a lot of different material here. And again, all of this is available to you for free just with your Warren-Newport library card. So if you want to continue learning more about using Microsoft Word, I strongly recommend checking out either Gale courses if you want to be able to devote a lot of time to it, or using LinkedIn Learning if you want to be able to pick and choose the length of the lesson that you want to take. Both of them will teach you quite a bit about each product, but it's really just a matter of what your preference is. The great thing about each of these, again, is LinkedIn Learning is going to allow you to indicate on your profile if you've taken a class. You can also get a certificate for every class that you finished using Gale courses as well. So those are products that are available through the library, but I want to encourage you that if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My email here at the library is rmurray@wnpl.info. Each of you probably did get an email from me as well, so you could always reply to that. But if you have questions or if you're stuck working with something, please feel free to reach out. You can also always stop by the library and use any of the computers that we have here, or ask for assistance at the Adult Services Desk. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate everybody being here tonight. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to stick around and answer those. Otherwise, if you have questions later, like I said, please feel free to reach out to me by email. I'll be happy to answer those for you. Thanks again for being here. I really appreciate your attention, and I hope all of you have a good evening.